Nazir Fears brings you stories of terror, mystery, and dark forces beyond your wildest imagination. Like, subscribe, share, and click the bell button now to keep up with the most spine-chilling content you can't afford to miss. Stay tuned as we dive deep into the unexplained and the terrifying. Story 1. The Stalker Who Never Left. Expanded. Valentine's Day was always a special occasion for Emily. She was a successful marketing professional living in a vibrant city, surrounded by friends and family who adored her. She had a loving boyfriend, James, who was a charming, down-to-earth guy. Their relationship had been growing stronger over the past year, and this Valentine's Day, Emily was looking forward to celebrating in the most romantic way she could imagine. A quiet evening at home, away from the hustle and bustle. James had gone all out for their date. He'd cooked her favourite meal, set the table with candles, and even surprised her with a bouquet of red roses. They ate, laughed, and reminisced about the good times they'd shared. It was the perfect evening. Until it wasn't. Around 9 p.m, as the evening was winding down, Emily decided to step out for a moment to get some fresh air. The apartment they shared was on the top floor of a high-rise overlooking a beautiful cityscape. As she walked out onto the balcony, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't the cool February breeze that made the hairs on her neck stand up. It was something else. Something subtle, yet undeniable. The hairs on her arms rose as she scanned the street below. Everything seemed normal. Cars driving by, people strolling along the sidewalk. But then she saw him. A man standing in the shadows of a nearby alleyway, his face obscured by the dim light. He was looking directly at her. His gaze was cold, unblinking, and it made her stomach flip. Emily stepped back, unsure of what to do. The man didn't move. He just stood there, locked in place, staring up at her. She thought about calling James out, but something told her not to disturb him just yet. After a few moments, she closed the sliding door, and the man disappeared from her view. The following day, Emily dismissed it as a figment of her imagination. After all, it was Valentine's Day, and everything had been going so well. But then, that night, it happened again. As Emily was putting away some dishes in the kitchen, she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. Her heart sank. There, standing just beyond the edge of her balcony, was the same man, the one she had seen the night before. She froze, staring at him. He was now closer, standing directly beneath her window, peering up into the apartment. His expression was unreadable, but his presence was unmistakable. This time, Emily's heart raced in fear. She rushed over to the phone and dialed James's number. "James, please hurry home," she whispered, trying not to sound panicked. "There's someone outside the apartment. I don't know who he is, but he's been watching me." James reassured her that he would be there soon. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. She stayed by the window, watching the man as he stood motionless below her, staring up at her apartment. When James finally arrived, he checked the balcony and the surrounding area. But the man was gone. "Maybe it was just someone passing by," James suggested, trying to calm her down. "You know how people stare sometimes. It's probably nothing." But Emily couldn't shake the eerie feeling that had settled in her chest. Over the next few days, the man appeared again and again, always at night, always in the shadows. Emily started keeping the blinds closed, never daring to look outside after dark. It wasn't long before she realized that this wasn't some random passerby. It was someone who had been watching her deliberately. Someone who knew where she lived, who knew her routine. One evening, as she and James were sitting in the living room, Emily heard a soft tapping at the window. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible. She got up, cautiously walking toward the source of the noise. When she looked out the window, her blood ran cold. The man was standing there, his face now visible in the dim light, his eyes locked onto hers, unblinking. Emily could see the faint outline of a smile creeping across his face. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. He didn't speak, but his expression said it all. It was as though he was daring her to confront him. Emily could barely breathe. Panic seized her chest as she backed away from the window. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her hands trembling as she struggled to keep it together. "There's a man outside my window. He's been following me for days," she explained to the dispatcher, who promised to send someone immediately. The police arrived shortly after, but by then the man had vanished. They scoured the area, but there were no signs of anyone lingering nearby. They checked the building's security cameras, but the footage was grainy and inconclusive. There was no trace of the stalker. Over the next few weeks, Emily became a prisoner in her own home. She couldn't leave without feeling as though she was being watched. She started taking different routes to work, always looking over her shoulder, but it never felt like enough. The man's presence loomed over her every waking moment, and she could feel his eyes on her constantly. One night, a few weeks after the police had left, Emily came home to find a single red rose on her doorstep. No note, just the flower. It was the same kind of rose that James had bought her on Valentine's Day, the one she had carefully placed in a vase on the kitchen counter. The realization hit her hard. The man had been inside her apartment. He had been there, watching her while she was asleep. Frantically, Emily checked every inch of the apartment, but everything seemed in place. Nothing had been taken, and there were no signs of forced entry. But the fear remained, gnawing at her from within. She couldn't escape the feeling that this was only the beginning. The next day, Emily made a decision. She packed her bags and left. She moved out of the apartment, taking a different route, abandoning everything that had once felt safe. She changed her phone number, her email address, even her work schedule. But the stalking didn't end. It continued in subtle ways, in messages left on her voicemail, in strange emails from untraceable accounts, in flowers that appeared on her doorstep at the same time every evening. The man was relentless. He never left her alone, even after she changed her life completely. It was as though he was attached to her, as if he had become part of her fate, destined to haunt her forever. And every Valentine's Day when the roses appeared again, Emily couldn't help but remember that first night, when she had first seen him standing in the shadows, staring up at her window. She had no choice but to live with the fear, knowing that the stalker would never leave. Story 2. The Dead Fiancé's Revenge. Expanded. In 2003, a small town nestled between rolling hills was home to Claire, a young woman with a promising future. She was an archaeologist, passionate about unearthing the secrets of the past. Her fiancé, Ryan, was everything she had ever wanted in a partner: charming, supportive, and deeply in love with her. They had been engaged for over a year, and their wedding was just around the corner. They were both excited to start their new life together, but fate had something far darker in store. Claire and Ryan had always shared a deep fascination with history. Their shared love of ancient artifacts and buried secrets had brought them closer together, and it was no surprise when Ryan proposed to Claire during a trip to Egypt near the pyramids. It was there that they discovered an ancient tomb, rumoured to hold treasures belonging to an unknown pharaoh. It was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, and Claire was thrilled by the prospect of unravelling more of the ancient world's mysteries. They had planned to return to the site on Valentine's Day, just a few weeks before their wedding. The tomb, deep beneath the Egyptian sands, had been untouched for centuries, and it was their chance to uncover secrets that would rewrite history. Little did Claire know that this journey would change her life forever. The night before they were set to return to the tomb, Ryan and Claire were out celebrating with friends. The mood was light and full of joy as they discussed wedding plans and their upcoming adventure. But later that night, when Claire and Ryan were driving back to their hotel, disaster struck. A speeding car barreled through a red light, colliding head-on with Claire and Ryan's vehicle. The impact was instantaneous, and Claire was knocked unconscious. She woke up in the hospital hours later, disoriented and in pain. The first thing she noticed was the cold emptiness beside her in the hospital bed. Ryan was gone. He had died instantly from the crash, and Claire was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered world. Her grief was overwhelming. The man she was about to marry, the man she had planned to spend the rest of her life with, was gone. But as Claire tried to move forward, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It was as if Ryan's death had awakened something dark within her, something that wouldn't let her go. In the weeks that followed, Claire found herself unable to escape the haunting memory of that night. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything. Her mind kept replaying the accident over and over again, as though it was some kind of twisted nightmare. But then on Valentine's Day, the 1-year anniversary of Ryan's death, things took a terrifying turn. Claire was staying at her apartment, alone, as she had done for the past several weeks. The grief had become a part of her, weighing heavily on her heart. She tried to distract herself, organizing Ryan's belongings, but nothing could fill the emptiness she felt inside. She was about to lie down for a nap when she heard a soft knock at the door. Confused, she walked to the door and opened it, but no one was there. At first, she thought it was just her mind playing tricks on her, but when she stepped back inside, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. On the floor, near the entrance, was a single red rose. She didn't recognize the handwriting on the note attached to it. "I'll always be with you." Her heart stopped. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Ryan's, but Ryan was dead. She had watched him be buried. She had mourned him, cried for him, and now, a year later, here he was, reaching out to her from beyond the grave. Terrified, Claire slammed the door shut and bolted it. She was convinced that someone was playing a cruel joke on her, but deep down, she knew it wasn't possible. The man who had sent her that rose was no longer of this world. The next few days were filled with odd occurrences. Claire would hear faint footsteps in the hallway when she was home alone. Sometimes she would catch glimpses of someone standing just outside her window, but when she would look again, no one would be there. She thought she was losing her mind. But as the days turned into weeks, the encounters became more frequent, and they became more direct. One night, as Claire sat in the living room, staring blankly at the television, she heard the distinct sound of a door opening behind her. She turned around, expecting to see the hallway, but instead, she saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was Ryan. His body was slightly translucent, his face pale, his eyes empty. He stared at her with an expression of both sadness and anger. "Why did you leave me?" he whispered, his voice cold and hollow. "You promised we'd be together forever." Claire froze, unable to speak, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to run, but her feet felt like they were cemented to the floor. The figure of Ryan took a step forward, his hand outstretched toward her, his cold fingers brushing her cheek. "You should have stayed with me," he murmured. "Now I'm here to make sure you never forget me." The air grew frigid, and Claire felt a sharp pain in her chest as if her heart was being pulled from her body. She gasped for air, feeling as though she was suffocating. The apparition of Ryan slowly faded into the darkness. leaving Claire gasping for breath, her body trembling with terror. From that night on, Claire was never truly alone. The ghost of Ryan followed her everywhere, whispering her name, appearing in mirrors, and sending her notes written in his handwriting. It was as though he were trying to pull her back into the life she had once shared with him, to drag her down into the darkness with him. Claire tried everything she could to escape the haunting presence of Ryan. She moved to a new city, changed her phone number, and even stopped talking to the people who had known her in the past. But it didn't matter. No matter where she went, Ryan's spirit was always there, lurking in the shadows. On the 2nd anniversary of his death, Claire decided to return to the place where it all started, the tomb they had discovered together. She hoped that if she could find some kind of closure, perhaps she could finally rid herself of Ryan's spirit. But when she arrived at the tomb, she found that something was waiting for her. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and as she stepped inside, the walls seemed to whisper her name. She reached the burial chamber, where the sarcophagus of the pharaoh still lay undisturbed. But as she approached, she heard a faint sound, a low, guttural growl. When she turned around, there was Ryan standing in the doorway, his form now twisted and corrupted, his face unrecognizable. "Come with me," he growled, his voice no longer the one she loved. "Forever." As Claire stepped back, she tripped over the edge of the stone coffin, and before she knew it, she was falling into the darkness. She screamed, but no sound escaped her lips. The tomb, once a place of discovery, had become her prison, a place where the dead could reach beyond the grave. Claire never made it out. Story 3. The Valentine's Day Killer. Expanded. It was supposed to be a perfect Valentine's Day, a quiet evening at home, filled with love and celebration. Laura and Mark had been together for 5 years, and they were planning on spending the evening cooking dinner together, watching a movie, and relaxing in the comfort of their home. They had even decided to forego the typical Valentine's Day crowds at restaurants, preferring the intimacy of their own kitchen. But that night would prove to be far from what they had expected. It started with a knock on the door, a soft, almost hesitant tap. At first, Laura thought it might be a delivery. Perhaps the flowers Mark had ordered for her had arrived early. But when she opened the door, no one was there. She stepped outside, looking down the hall, but there was nothing. Shaking her head, she turned to go back inside, but something caught her eye. A small, neatly wrapped box sitting on the doorstep. It was about the size of a jewelry box, and there was a note attached to it. Laura bent down and picked it up, her curiosity piqued. "To the couple that thinks they're safe. You're not." The note sent a chill down her spine. She quickly closed the door and turned to Mark, who had been in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Mark, look at this," she said, handing him the box. "Who would send something like this?" Mark's face grew pale as he read the note. "This isn't funny. We should call the police." Before they could act, a sudden violent banging erupted on the door. Mark and Laura froze, staring at each other in terror. The sound was deafening, as though someone was trying to break through the door. Mark cautiously walked toward the door, peering through the peephole. His face drained of colour as he saw a shadowy figure standing just outside. The banging continued, louder now, as the door began to shake with the force of the blows. Mark stepped back, his hands trembling. "Whoever this is, they're not going to stop," he said, his voice shaking with fear. Without warning, the door splintered under the force of a powerful kick, and the figure stepped inside, wearing a dark mask and holding a large knife. The man's eyes were cold, devoid of any emotion, and his movements were slow, deliberate. "You thought you were safe," the man growled. "But you're not." Laura screamed, but the man quickly shoved a cloth over her mouth, silencing her. She struggled against him, but he was too strong. Mark tried to defend them, grabbing a nearby chair and attempting to swing it at the intruder, but the man was faster. He knocked Mark to the ground with a single blow, leaving him unconscious. As Laura fought to break free, the man slowly approached her, his knife glinting in the dim light. She could see the dark gleam in his eyes, and she knew that she was at his mercy. The man stood over her, watching her struggle, his smile widening as he raised the knife. But before he could strike, a loud siren echoed through the house. The police had arrived. In the chaos that followed, the man fled into the night, leaving behind only terror and confusion. The police managed to track him down later, but not before he had claimed multiple other victims in the town, couples just like Laura and Mark.